How's everyone doing?
Hey.
Oh, 16. Okay. 18. Oh, what I expected. Fun fact, if you ever run a meetup on meetup.com, just take the number and divide it by half, and that's how many people are going to show up. So that's triggered the trade. Almost. Yeah, we had about 41 last count, or last time I looked. So a little bit off, but it was like a huge influx. It was like, I tried to send out an email on Monday. Y'all don't care about this, but I tried to send out an email on Monday. I forgot to. I sent it out Tuesday. Does anyone get that? Does anyone ever see when I send an email? Yeah. Okay, cool. So, I forget. Like, I forget that there's meetups that I want to go to. Sent it out yesterday and was like, RSVP, because I got to buy food. And then it was like, okay, if I thought the number settled, then I ordered the food, shipped, ordered 24 hours in advance if you get Couple Bob's, which is like the best catering, in my opinion, but it's a little expensive. And also, you have to do 24 hours in advance. So, another trick of the trade. And then like 10 more people signed up. So very annoying. I mean, not annoying that you're like coming and signing up. Thank you so much for coming. I just want everything to be knowable at all times. I don't want any mystery in life, right? That's what life's about, knowing everything. Yeah, exactly. Welcome. My name is Brooks. I am I do DevRel stuff at Remix. No, on React Router by the Remix team at Shopify. There we go. I got it. I think that's how we're saying it now. Can everyone online, folks, can y'all hear me? It looks like I'm speaking, so I think we're good. Welcome. We got like 5 people online, so thank you all so much for coming and listening. This talk is being recorded, so yeah, you can watch it later if you want to. Whoa, that's my name. So this is what happens when nobody signs out. I have to speak. So I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be giving a talk called The New Create React App. Full disclosure, this is a conference talk I'm giving in a week. Again, nobody signed up. Totally wouldn't have done this otherwise, promise. So I'm giving this conference talk in a week, and I built the slides today, and I haven't practiced once. So y'all get the really raw thing. But my ask is, if you come to this meetup, most of y'all already know me and already like coming to this meetup and whatnot. So my ask is, if you have feedback for me, I would really love to hear it. This is totally like open dialogue conversation. Maybe not in the middle. Maybe let me get through it before you start booing. But afterwards, you can be like, hey, like delete all of that. That was terrible. Don't go. You tell me that after the fact. But it's also an invitation to say this is the point of meetups to me. It's not just to do talks, but it's to grow as a developer. Maybe that growing is just by meeting other people. That's a totally valid way. Maybe it's by, I was gonna make a joke about growing by eating food, but that was lame. Maybe it's, you're meeting people, you're expanding your network, you're just making friends. For me, it's honestly been like a joy to just create the meetup itself. So if you want to get involved in like the actual organizational side of it, like reach out to me. I'm trying to slowly work up getting some more people to help me out on that side of things. But additionally, if you want to give talks or work on your public skills, speaking skills, or just share cool things you built, this is also a great platform for that. And if you do want to speak at a big on a big stage or at a conference, you've never done that before, this is like an incredible proving ground. I would love nothing more than to help you figure out how to do that, how to craft your talk, and how to even craft the formulation of what's the thing called, the Culver papers, the CFP. So anyway, hopefully I'm a little bit maybe leading by example. That's how I'm spending it in my mind to make it not just about me today. So I hope this talk is enjoyable. I hope everyone likes it. It's going to be about like a 20-minute talk, so it won't be super long. Obviously, we'll have a Q&A afterwards since we're in the smaller room. But even once we're done, we'll still hang out. Like, let's hang out. We have this building till 9. I really love getting to meet people. Like I said, I work on the Remix React Router team. So if you have direct feedback, I'd super love to hear that. But also just meet someone you haven't met before. Meet someone you met before, re-meet them. I don't know, all that stuff. Probably forgot their name from last time anyway. So anyway, that all being said, if you do want to give a talk, here's like a bunch of ideas. I need to update this. This is super old, but it's all still super relevant. But you could, bunch of lightning talk ideas, nested routing, cookies, sessions, all sorts of stuff. You want to talk about internationalization, just demo something that you like. Accessibility is always a topic that like everyone is always relearning over and over again, because it's just not something you use every day, unless you use a screen reader every day. I knew one person who did that. That's because that was the job. And yeah, I'll just do these now because I'm not going to switch slides. Again, we do have a website, remixaustin.com. We're actually in the process of revamping it. I don't think that Mark is here, but Seth is. Seth is in the process of revamping it. Yeah, I do think we're going to probably we've done like a hackathon in the past for one of these nights. We're probably going to do one again, not like next month, so I'll space them out. And that may be something we work on. Anyway, if you are interested in open source projects, we're trying to revamp our website a little bit. So that is a good open source project. So if you have ideas, reach out. Also, our GitHub is like on the website, and it has a discussion that's open to kind of talk through these ideas. There's been a little bit of activity in it. So yeah, definitely check that out. If you have more questions, talk to Seth or me. And then next meetup will probably be July 3rd. Do you like that I did the American flag as a little period because it's not the 4th, so it can't be really big. So that's kind of small. Anyway, is it an Easter egg if you point it out immediately before anyone noticed it? So yeah, first Wednesday of every month is when we try to do these meetups. So book your calendars. I'll try to get the meetup on pretty quickly. Cool. Well, that's enough of me talking. Now I'm going to start talking a lot more. All right, hold on. Kind of switch. The new Create React app. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever wanted to try out the new hot UI library React, but you don't want to spend forever configuring webpack and Babel and maybe ESLint and Jest and just all these ridiculous, cool, but confusing and poorly documented new technologies? And at the same time, you want a good set of defaults so you can just get started. And finally, you don't want to be locked in. You want an option to eject from this. Also, pretend it's 2016. Does this sound like you? Well, I have the solution for you. It's called a Create React app. It's created by the Meta team. Or were they called Facebook back then? That's a good point. Created by the Facebook team, the creators of React. And so it has all of their best ideas and best principles in it. Of course, I'm joking. Create React app is a little bit of an older app or an older tool, but it really was the best way in 2016 and for several years to create a new React app. It's the way that I learned React. It's the way that I built multiple projects I was learning on and trying for fun, and projects that I actually made money off of. We're all started with npx Create React app. Was it npm at the time? I don't know, but Create React app. And it was great. It ran all this stuff and it worked really well. In fact, it was created by Dan and Christopher Shadow, who were both on the React team for years and very influential. They put all these great ideas into building it. And what they said in one of their initial commits is they said, we want a new blessed getting started experience for building spas in React that we can actually ship. Because before that point, it was a bunch of boilerplate. It was a bunch of starters. You had to go find, whatever influencer you like the best or whatever. Maybe someone on the React team had created something. You had to cobble these things together, or God forbid, you would read the webpack documentation that was not the best at the time and try and figure all this stuff out for yourself. So this is a wonderful, wonderful idea that they created this experience. So their goal was to make it easy to get started with React. And their philosophy was they wanted it to be zero configuration. You want to configure a single thing, just a single one dependency, React scripts. And you'd have an exit strategy. You weren't locked into this thing. You didn't have to keep using it if you didn't want to. And they even said why this wouldn't fail. They wanted to hide all of these complicated things behind a single CLI. The Create React app CLI and the React scripts dev, React scripts start, all these different commands, and it was all bundled into that. And you could just get started very easily. And if you ever needed to, you could eject. You could get back your webpack and your Babel config and all these different things. So you weren't locked into it. You could always change it if you needed to. And their goal was to promote the hell out of that piece, as they say, to keep promoting the fact that you can eject. You're not stuck with this thing, because they didn't want people to feel like you're stuck with, Dan and Christopher's ideas. Unfortunately, as Gene Fuller said, that an OSS project is never finished, it's abandoned. And today, Create React app isn't really the way anyone's starting their React apps anymore, hopefully not at least. There's a few reasons for this. A big reason is that it's kind of dead. So I stole this slide from Ryan Florence. He put more margin on that notes itself. He gave this talk at React Conf last month about our future with React Router and Remix. And he talked about how the Create React app project has not really been committed to in a while. The last commits were about like 8 months ago, I think. You get the dates on this right. And then before that, like a year. And then before that, about 2 years. So for a while, it's slowed down. And I don't think it's controversial at all to say that this project really is dead. So while Create React app was really good, it also had this kind of big problem. I talked about it a lot, that they wanted you to not be locked in, right? This is what you get when you create a React app. You get Pretty simple thing, README, package JSON, you get a public, folder, and then your source is very straightforward. It's really simple. And everything you need is in that package.json. You got those scripts that can run everything. So the problem is that whole no lock-in, you can eject thing kind of does this. And it just turns into something insane. That is, maybe it's a nice idea. You technically can change it, but now you have to go learn what webpack is. You have to go learn what Babel is. So you're not really saved necessarily. So either your two options, if you want to make your app more sophisticated, like have server-side rendering or something like that, is you basically either have to wait until the Create React App team adds whatever feature you want, if they will, or you have to go learn how webpack and Babel works. So you're back at the original problem that we were at. Yeah, didn't love that. Man, more margin. This is good to see. All right. I also found this really interesting that when you eject, they actually would ask you to fill out a survey, which is, I think, really cool. They really wanted this feedback, but it also kind of gave these kind of two different realities. So initially they said, oh, we don't want this to be a lock-in. Yet the survey was basically asking you, why did you eject? What did we not have that was good enough for you? So Create React App kind of always had this fundamental issue where it was a really good starter, but it maybe wasn't actually the best thing to build on top of, at least long term. Most people ended up having to eject at some point. So then comes along Vite, our savior. I don't think I even have to explain what Vite is to most people, but in case I do, Vite is it's a build chain. It came out of the Vue ecosystem, which is really fascinating because it's actually used by all sorts of frameworks and libraries and whatnot. React being maybe one of the later adopters of it, but React ecosystem has by and large really turned to it. Why is Vite so special? It's easy to get started with React. Y'all read that? Does that need to be bigger? Okay. I don't know what the scale will be there anyway. And the philosophy, easy configuration, just one dependency, just have Vite, sort of. And then you have an exit strategy, meaning that you can always configure. You can always add plugins that are actually built really well and really designed to be pluggable to build on top of. So your exit strategy is actually just let your app grow as it naturally does. You don't have to eject and then decide what you're going to do with this big mess. You just build on top of it as you need new things. And it's really, really easy to get started with. Like I said, you just do npm create Vite at latest, and then you can give it a name and select your framework. And then there's a couple options, which are really great. Fifth one's kind of interesting. Maybe we'll get back to that. And it's incredibly simple. This is your full config when you get started. You just got a defined config and you've got React. And React is a little plugin. And then you're off to the races. You have your React spa. We've now just recreated Create React App. Amazing. It seems like everybody else, or a lot of the ecosystem really likes it. This is React Scripts, which is Create React App versus Vite. And Vite is just taken off. And React Scripts is honestly actually on a little bit of a downcline at this point. If you zoom out, you would see that even more, but it would also make the Vite part a little bit hard to see. And so when I said I'm going to talk about Remix being the new Create React app, I actually I got a little bit of pushback. Someone said, "What are you even talking about? Vite is the Create React app replacement. Why would you talk about Remix? Remix is fine, don't get me wrong, but you're comparing a framework to a builder. They're just different things." So I said, you have to hear my talk. Here we are. So Vite is a replacement for Create React app. I genuinely actually believe that. I do believe that everything that we just talked about that Create React app had, Vite has replaced. It's done. So end of talk, right? No, it's a little bit more because I named this Remix as the new Create React app. I have a very specific meaning for the word new besides the word replacement. So when you're starting, why did I put this slide in here? Yeah, sorry. All right, going back to that. Yeah, so I have a meaning for that word new. If we actually look at the current React docs, their advice for starting a new React project is actually to use a framework. They don't even say to use Create React app. Of course, they don't say to use Vite either. They probably should. But they really do actually recommend using a framework. And that's kind of the main reason they don't just recommend Vite, because they think that you're going to need a lot more. They even have a very top a question. Can I use React without a framework? Of course, you cannot. That's what no, I'm just kidding. They do say if you're building a new app or a site fully with React, we recommend using a framework. The reason being, we found that most apps and sites eventually build solutions to common problems such as code splitting, routing, data fetching, and generating HTML. In fact, the Create React app website, actually, when you go to the Add a Router section, it even recommends React Router as its recommended solution. It says you can use anything you want, but this is just the most popular at the time. So even Create React app knew that you're going to run into these limitations where you are knowing a router and styling and all these sorts of things. And Rick Hanlon on the React team said at ReactConf that you're either using a framework or you're building one. And building a framework is actually really, really hard. A lot of companies that do build a framework they either accidentally do it or do it on purpose, but either way, they typically end up with a person or a whole team typically supporting and building that framework. And that can work for a while, but then you get to this point where you're just saying, why am I rebuilding the frameworks that already exist in the world, like Next.js or Remix or what have you? So where could you get, wait, this is out of order, isn't it? You feel like we lost something. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so talking about code splitting, routing, data fetching, and generating HTML, where could you get all of that? Where could we get all this if Vite isn't giving us this out of the box? Oh, sorry, that's the wrong slide. There we go. And in fact, it's not just, or I guess I should say here that Remix, React Router, it actually gives you all these things. It gives you data fetching, it gives you routing, it gives you ways to generate HTML via server-side rendering and more options that are coming down the pipeline, and I'll talk about in a second. Even one of the core members of the Vite team said that with spa mode, with Remix, what we were doing, he even thought that this is filling the void of that Create React app left with its own Create React app limitations, which I should have talked about. So Create React app is primarily one of its big limitations is it is a spa only. It's a pure spa. You don't have any server-side rendering. And so you don't actually have any like React server component support, which is a big thing that the React ecosystem is trying to push forward. So Create React app doesn't even have that. That's going to be a big problem. Vite has it, by its default, it doesn't have that built in or anything. So he was positing that people really, people wanted to turn to Vite for the React starters as the Create React app equivalent, but it's not the right path. In fact, he thought that the Create React app equivalent needs to come deeper within the community. So that's why there is that fifth item there. When we created spa mode, we actually worked with the Vite team to try and offer that as a step forward to having Vite have a bridge to get to a full-on framework as your starter for a Create React app. And now with our move to React Router, where we are taking everything that was in Remix and merging it into React Router, we're actually trying to reach back to the community and give the community everything we've learned from Remix and make React Router even better and even more approachable and usable. This doesn't mean that React Router is just going to be a framework. You can still actually use it the way you've always used it. You can use it purely just for client-side routing as a pure spa. You can still use it as a library. But we're adding a Vite plugin so that it's incredibly simple to build or to use it as a framework, like the React docs recommend and like even the Vite team recommends. So that slide's messed up. There we go. All right. So what should the new Create React app do? I think that the new Create React app should make it easy to get started with React, have code splitting, routing, data fetching, and generating HTML, have good community buy-in, have a defined future, be up to date on the latest React features. That to me is what the new Create React app should be, not just a replacement. If we just get a replacement, we just have Create React app. Why don't we just keep using that? This is what I think the new version of your default starting point with React should be. And let's start with that first one, right? Make it easy to start with React. So how easy is it to just add a Remix plugin instead of React? Or better yet, React Router plugin. And I don't know if I had the little asterisk there. If I don't, I need to add it. Yeah, I should say this is not finalized. We're still working on this and actively developing this. React Router 7 hasn't been released, but this is kind of what we're thinking it's going to look like, is something just this simple. In fact, we even talked about this in our last blog post, Ryan Florence did. We talked about all these new features that we are trying to add with React Router 7. We're trying, to support the latest and the greatest. I probably need to make this a little bit bigger. The latest and the greatest from React. We're trying to give you server-side rendering, but also RSC and server actions and static pre-rendering and even type safety. These are all features we want that we are planning and already have worked on and implemented most of. We're just finalizing it and creating the bridge from Remix and React Router v6 into that React Router 7 world. So once React Router 7 comes, I think it gives you both the ease and everything that you could want from the latest and greatest of Remix. And then there's also the community aspect I talked about. I should probably add a little label on each of these slides so that you know which piece I'm talking about, I'm realizing. But I said that it needs to come deep within the community and it needs to be a support for the community. These are the NPM downloads, which, it's hard to use these statistics for any like accurate thing except for directional. And what we can say here is the top one, that's React. or rather React DOM. That is everyone using React essentially on the web. And about half those users are using React Router essentially. I didn't want to put anyone else up here because I don't want it to look like we're trying to dig on other frameworks and other routers or anything. There are other great routers, great frameworks out there, but the reality is React Router has just been the community router for years and years and years. So we want to give back to that community router and make it even better and a really, really good default for React apps. So I think that React Router is the new Create React app. In fact, I think that it is. I don't know why I have those two slides. I think that React Router is the I think I was trying to say this is the statement, but then this is me just saying this is my opinion. And I want you to change my mind. As we're developing this, like I said, we don't have React Router 7 out yet. So we have a little bit of time to kind of prove this and to try and convince everyone that this is true. And this is my first start in that, but I really actually want feedback as we're going about this. What do you feel like is missing? Seriously, tell me, what do you think is missing with React Router 7 and with what we're trying to do here that gives a good, solid default Create React app experience for all sorts of new developers or experienced developers who want to build something that they know they can keep building on as their the complexity of their application scales. So thank you for listening. My name is Brooks Lybrand. You can find me on Twitter and tell me all your ideas. So thank you all so much for coming. That was my talk. Yeah, I guess I said I would ask for questions. So if you have questions, I'm happy to. Thank you for the online applause too. Happy to answer them. I'll put this back up so it's not just like a weird beat. There we go. So any questions? Go ahead.
Alan, what was the process like working with the Vite team to get Remix added there? Were they hesitant or did they see what y'all were talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I should probably maybe make that. Hold on. Sorry. Back to a slide when we talked about, we'll show it as the defaults. So this slide with the tag. So this was actually not our idea. This was the Vite team's idea. I should probably show that. Like we didn't say, hey, can we make it the default? They actually like, yeah, I should show the context there. He was the one who actually said like, honestly, like I'd kind of like us to have like a default where like Remix is one of the beginning ones. So it was really great. They were like, they reached out to us from the beginning, the Vite, like when we started exploring Vite as our compiler, because previously Remix had a closed compiler and it was kind of the problems that Create React app has actually. Once we started looking into Vite, they were actually really excited, really supportive, really helpful. We actually sponsor the Vite project every month now because we just really love them and love what they're doing and wanted to keep developing. So yeah, it was really good. And yeah, like a ton of love from the Vite community as well as like the Remix community. Like everyone was happy. No one was mad that we were doing this. Good question. Thanks, Brett.
Not a question, but I just want to say it's great stuff. My team, we basically saw React scripts as a source of vulnerability at some point in the future. And so started with just going to Vite and then became React Router. And so the whole templates moved over to this React down and stuff.
That's awesome. Cool. So I'm speaking like directly to you. This is really good. Awesome. Good. Thank you. Any other questions?
The line chart up, there's like a definite dip around on both libraries around like December 23.
Oh yeah, that's always.
I mean, is there some kind of a event?
This always confuses people. It's the Christmas like slump.
Code freezes. People are running CI.
It's like most labs do it.
Yeah. No, this is like you'll see this on like every single. I mean, it's a great question, but it is super funny because I think I only have a year. If you go out to 2 years, you'll see another dip. But yeah, no one's running their CI/CD. Not no one, but a lot of people are not running their CI/CD, and a lot of people start working. Yeah, so code freezes, all that stuff. Yeah.
What does ejecting kind of imply?
Yeah, I probably should talk about that a little bit better. It's a great question. So you ever use Create React app? Okay, cool. So it implies that
I thought you said that there was going to be ejection from React. Did you say that?
I should have clarified what that meant. Yeah, so I need to talk about this better. So what they wanted, Create React app wanted an exit strategy. It wasn't really about ejecting. Ejecting was just the way that they did it. So to me, the problem is what they were doing is Create React app had the philosophy of this is a really complicated way to set up your app. And that was just true at the time. It wasn't because they should have picked Vite didn't exist. It's just complicated because you had Babel, you had webpack, all these kind of things, especially make JSX work because it was just so new at the time. So it's all this complexity. And I said, let's hide all that complexity. And if they need to see it, we can exploit it. And Vite took the opposite approach because they could at the time when they did it. They said, we're not going to hide the complexity. We're just going to make it not complex to start. It's just very basic. And so the exit strategy is you can build your own plugins very easily. People author plugins all the time, like custom plugins that they need because it's all built on the rollup system, right? Or whatever, it's like rollup plugins. Or you just adopt ones from the community. Like they're incredibly simple. You want MDX support? Okay, it's just a plugin. You want like the whole unified like chain with that? Okay, just a plugin. Do you want like all your images to automatically be optimized every time you build? Sure, that might not be the best strategy, but there's a plugin and it's incredibly simple. They're really easy to read the plugins and go like look through the vulnerabilities and everything. Whereas like webpack plugins are not necessarily that way. So that's like the exit strategy is that, okay, you're stuck on Vite, but that was always true with React app. You're stuck on webpack and Babel. Like you're stuck on React. Like at some point you have lock-in. You can't totally get rid of that. So yeah, you're on Vite, but you're not stuck with just like the default Vite config and like you have to blow it up to something huge if you want to eject. I think I could elaborate that better though. So thank you so much for asking that question.
So with Remix as the new, like as a default option, you talked about, you know, with Create React app, it's a spot. So Remix out of the box is SSR then, right? I'm assuming the config that Remix generates from the Vite, the Create Vite is the SSR version, not the SPA version, right?
It's a good question. Run it in a second.
Because I know Create Remix at latest is the SSR version.
Yeah, I think it's still does SSR.
Anyway, done any of that recently?
I think the Vite, if you, does SSR thing, and then you could configure it to be SPA. I believe that's still how it works.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I just don't remember what we did.
Unless it was changed recently.
I think you're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know if it's worth adding in the talk.
Yeah, it's the default one. Okay. Sorry.
I don't know if it's worth adding in the talk to say like, hey, this does change the default to be server rendered. Because you are making a full swing from one end to the other. And while I agree, I think that's the right choice. It might be good to convince folks that it is the right choice because now it's like, oh crap, our starter needs to run on a server, not like is some static JavaScript, you know? And so maybe adding color around that and why that's the right choice is.
I agree. Yeah, I think what I need to do is I think I need to continue to kind of come back to these and put them throughout because that's really the generating HTML kind of piece.
Exactly.
And the RSC piece. I think you're absolutely right. And it's not, and our default, like I need to show that too, probably is you could just turn it defaults. Like it's really easy. Like it's very straightforward. So I don't actually know what we're going to do as the default necessarily with the Vite plugin. We've thought about like flipping it just because again, it's the default. And it's like, do people really need to serve it for their default? I'm just trying to mess around with this thing. I don't know the answer, so I'm not going to necessarily say, but I agree with you that that's a really good point. Of like, why are we flipping that default? If Create React app started as a SPA, pure only whatever. We've all shifted. There's been years of context, and we've all shifted. So it's just kind of like, this seems default is maybe that you do start with the server because that's actually if you're starting that way, it's a lot easier than trying to say, well, I'm on a SPA, but now I want to get to a server.
Yeah, it's probably worth just saying like, it's way easier to generate some static HTML and build time and cache it. Versus, oh, now we need to bring up an entire server to like run our server rendering. So it's like probably easier to opt in to this way versus the other way.
That's been good feedback. Thank you.
So I have a question. Like, how would the migration process look like if you start this path right now and then when React Router 7 comes out?
Yeah, I should probably put something in that because that will be a question. Right now, you should. Sorry. There's something on my keyboard. You should use Remix right now. Remix is the best in brand that we have because if you want server-side rendering or anything like that with React Router today, you have to set all that up yourself. We don't have a Vite plugin for all that stuff. If you don't want that, and you're like, I just want to be on a SPA, that's great. But like again, Remix it. You have a SPA mode, and it has automatic code splitting built in. It has like the module graph. It has all these things that are really nice. So there's just no reason to not use it. And then if you do want to actually use a server ever and do server-side rendering, you're already there. Plus, it's going to be a lot easier migration. Like they're both going to be easy. We'll make them as simple as possible, but it will be like the same API as much as we can possibly keep it.
And another question, let's say someone had a React app with a Vite, but then they decided they want to use React Router 7. And that's not in the context of starting a Remix app initially. Would the migration be just as simple or?
Yeah, so if you're on React Router and you want to migrate
Six,
to,
yeah.
to React Router 7, basically, yeah, it's going to depend a little bit where you are in that story. And yeah, I probably need to mention this a little bit of like where we're actually developing that story. That's like not the talk, this talk. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not trying to deflect. That's not like this talk specifically. This talk is more just like where I think the default should be. But once we get that, we're already actively developing docs and like API bridges and all these kind of things. To answer that question, so it's basically like you need to be on React Router 6, you need to be on the latest minor. You need to adopt the like data routing essentially. So that's like a concept in React Router where you're actually, your routers are set up to where you have like loaders and actions and all that kind of stuff. So you're already kind of thinking in the way that Remix thinks about data mutations and updates and all that kind of stuff. So you need to adopt all of that. And then if you're at that point, moving over should actually be pretty simple. Oh, sorry, and you need Vite. If you're on Vite and you're using the data loaders, you're actually like in a really good place. It should be incredibly simple to just move over to, you probably move over to small mode first. When React Router 7's out, you just like adopt our Vite plugin instead of the React Vite plugin.
Yeah, and last final question, because like this React Router 7 approach is just so much modular are you still thinking like a Remix 3 at some point, or do you think this is just going to be a default way through the beats and React Router 7 and then 8 and so on?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, I can, how much am I allowed to share?
You won't tell.
No, let me just, I'm just going to read an article out loud. No, I'm just kidding. Is that it?
Oops.
Run/blog. We have a shortcut, but I don't remember it. So basically, where did we talk about this? Background RSC changes. Yeah, it's kind of in this section. So Ryan kind of talked about this. So basically, we have really been exploring like what Remix looks like built on RSC from the ground up. The problem is like we did not want to take the approach of rebuilding Remix from the ground up on RSC. Some people have gone before us and tried to take that approach, and I honestly applaud them because it taught us a lot about what that looks like. RSCs are like, we think they're really cool. React Server components, we think they're really cool. We think it's a great technology. We think there's a lot of good things about it. It's new though, and it's new, and also B, like we are really trying not to like break everyone's experience using our framework. We have enough experience in that in the past with React Router version like 4, I think it was, and another one. So anyway, all that's to say, like we honestly were thinking of kind of doing this big like shift into like a new version of Remix. And we decided not to do that because it just didn't make much sense. So anyway, what that is going to look like eventually, what we're doing is, we're trying to say like React Router is like the full circle of what everything you'll see in Remix be. It is the full completion of that with more RSC, static-free rendering, type-safe routing, all that kind of stuff. What we're trying to do with React is we're trying to actually like rebuild it from the ground up with RSC, lean back more even into the server and see what that looks like. Can't say much more than that, unfortunately, but yeah, that's basically like what, and they've been developing this for like a year. Like this is like something we've been working on for a super long time. So we're really excited. We want to tell everyone, we just don't want to be like giving the message about React Router 7 and that message at the same time and trying to develop them both at the same time. Because then we're just going to get nothing done. We'd rather just give you all React Router 7 because it's already going to be awesome.
One last final question. I don't have to answer. But the migration from React Router 7 to whatever that new thing gonna be, is it gonna be like from Angular to Angular 2, where it's like a whole different thing, or it was like
100%.
Yeah, they changed the paradigm, right? If you're,
Yeah, it's a good question.
because like with router, you're leaning back on the routing principles and the data APIs and the concept of loaders and actions, which sure, you could just use RSCs to perform those. Like if you're leaning back on that fully and rebuilding it, I would venture to guess that that wouldn't be the case, that you couldn't, like that migration path might be more difficult.
Yeah, so it's not really going to be a migration is the best way I can say it. Y'all can tell me if I'm wrong in a few years because they're still developing it. It's more that these two things can be used together and they're a replacement for each other. It's really hard to explain all that without going into details, of course, and the details are changing at all times. But yeah, it's not going to be like, okay, Remix V33 is out now, like try it and like now migrate all your stuff to it. It's more like, hey, use this thing and use your React Router app on it, or maybe use like other things on it. Is that enough mystery?
Oh, no,
Sorry.
it makes sense.
I like that. Going back to React Router a little bit and what's going to happen there. The new data APIs, it looks like they're all like only programmatically creating these routes. Like they're like, if you want to leverage the data APIs, you can't use the component version of the router.
Are you talking about? Actually, I'm not sure if I know what you're talking about. Are you talking about
So,
existing APIs or future APIs?
so like using the loaders and actions in React Router. Those have to be used with the functional version of like the create browser router rather than like the component version client-side router. Does that make sense?
So you're talking about like this here or no?
Specifically, I'm looking at the page that says picking a router, and it's basically saying that the following routers do not support the data APIs, but it's like it's the same type of router, just how you invoke them.
Yeah. So
Those are purely client side, right? Like
it's not so much just about client side. It's more about like, yeah. So it's basically, it's very annoying that we have all this stuff that honestly drives us crazy.
because it's like config-based routing versus
Yeah.
like
The reason we did this is because we didn't want to introduce breaking changes.
Yeah.
You know, we wanted people to be able to move from one version to the next. And 6.4 was like a minor upgrade to say like, hey, we're remixing React Router. That was actually blog post that we had. Oh, with that video. Interesting. Remixing React Router. So we talked about how we're like bringing the best back into it. So basically these all exist for legacy reasons.
Yeah.
These exist in that way. So yeah, if you're here, you do have to move to here. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's exactly what you're saying or not, but yeah.
yeah. So that like the functions create browser router are the only ones that will allow loaders and actions, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's your first step is moving from the component model of routes to
Oh yes, I
the-
understand what you're
the
saying.
defined configuration of your routes in these functions.
Yeah, so you need to move away from this. And so
Okay.
this was honestly, this is my favorite version of routing ever. Is component-based routing. It is super cool. And when they made it, people were really excited about it. Even like the React team was like, this is so cool, like routing that's actually truly React. But the problem is, and the whole reason they created Remix is this doesn't work actually. You have a lot of problems with this.
Yeah.
Just the very first one is the fact that you can conditionally render routes now. And that seems really cool and really neat. And that's fine if you're like totally in a client-side only world.
Yeah.
But if you're in a server world, that doesn't work. And then even if you are in a client-side world, it's actually better if you know all your routes ahead of time, or at least what you need to know at the time. And that you can actually render your data at the top. We got very obsessed with this whole like everything has to be like data fetching and rendering, and like everything is like in the component, and that can be nice. That honestly, that's what RC is trying to do, like a better version of that, or more across the bridge kind of version of it, the bridge of the server and the client. But when it was just in the client, it actually like just pushed us way too far in small world where we didn't need to go. So that's why like for a while, like we've had this API for like 2 years now. We really try to encourage people like this is a better paradigm. We have teams at Shopify who are using React Router this way. They're not using Remix. They're just using this. And they upgraded to this because they inherently thought it was better. We did not tell them to. Like we told them go to Remix, and they said no, we're doing this. So
Yeah, and I think this is like news to me, right? Because I've been off
Yeah,
React
yeah.
Router for ages. So it's like, oh, right, now we can actually do this
Yeah.
in the React Router package. And we should, because that's where the future's gonna be.
yeah,
right.
John
So-
Vance too.
yeah.
No, it's fine. If you're just using Remix, you have no reason to like know this. Because the
Exactly.
React Router folks, this was our first step because we knew we were going to eventually do. We knew we were going to do this. We thought we were going to do it the opposite way. We thought we were going to say, surprise, React Router is now remixed, but we realized that was not the right decision. I've said the reasons a couple times. But yeah. Yeah.
New create React app, it's like supposed to take advantage of like all the latest and greatest features of React, like server components. Why, since like Remix isn't at the level where they're able to implement that yet, why would that be the new create React app instead of like Next, which uses?
Yeah, I think I need to hit on that a little bit better because I agree with you. I think I need to make this point more clear in the slide bigger. It's more like I don't think a new create React app exists right now. I don't think there's a good alternative personally. I don't even think Remix is a good alternative. I don't really want to talk about Next when I'm on stage for obvious reasons, maybe not obvious. You talk to me later if you think I should. I just don't think any of them actually are. I think we actually are building the best version. And so when we release React Router 7, we are going to have RSC and server action support. And so at that point, I'm like, this is the future we're building to. And I think at that point, it's a great default. So that's totally valid. And I should clarify that better because you're right. I actually kind of don't think Remix right this moment is. I was kind of hoping we'd have the RSC support at this point, but I can't control that because it takes time to develop stuff. I'm not the one developing it. So.
Yeah, but Meta's not building it. So like Meta's not contributing to create React
Oh,
app.
Yeah, that's,
much
I mean, that's,
anymore.
that's
so
the other
that's
point,
it's
yeah.
not going to get moved.
Yeah, React scripts will never have.
It's just.
It's almost come.
No, that's a really good point. I think I should clarify that better. That I agree with you actually.
So you just said React Router V7 would have some of the features like RSC and
Yeah.
such. Why is in the V? I've been thinking this since the talk was over. In the V options, it should got the JavaScript, the TypeScript options, and then remix. Like why wouldn't it say React Router?
I don't know what we're gonna change it to when we get this out, but it's because so the defaults that they had built were just their own little templates, and they're like, we don't want to tell you how to build. Like it was that it's actually let me go back to it.
Does my question make sense?
Yeah.
It all didn't. Yeah.
Well, A, it's not built. That's the big reason.
What's that?
React Router 7 doesn't exist is the problem. Like it hasn't been released yet. And I probably need to hit that a little bit better. Or no.
But coming into this, I heard about how Remix was being paused or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
and all this effort was going towards React Router.
Yeah.
We talked about it a little bit tonight. So I've been thinking like, why wouldn't this say React Router?
Yeah. So right now, if this did do React Router, because okay, actually, sorry, I got to back up. So this is the first thing. So they basically said, hey, we built these templates before like they added the remix one. They're like, we had the React with TypeScript, everything you just said. These four, they built those.
They being
The V team, sorry, the V team built those. They did not include data fetching, routing. They didn't include anything like that. It was like create React app. It was just a spa. It's just like, this is how React's rendered. You go figure it out. And they are not interested in trying to tell the React ecosystem how to build a framework or what their default should be. So at this point, we built Remix. It has spa mode. It works on Vite. So they're like, great, this is a good default for like if you actually want to use the framework. Why it doesn't use React Router right now is because in the current state, until we release React Router V7 in a few months, hopefully, to get all of that frameworky stuff working, you would have to do all this like ridiculous setup to get like server-side rendering working and RSC and all these kind of things, all the stuff that we're trying to do inside of like React Router itself, inside of a plugin. So you don't have to do all that yourself. So it would be like create React app and then eject is like the experience you would get. And that's not a good like default. I'm just trying to figure out how this stuff works. Does that kind of answer it?
Yeah, I mean, some of it's coming from my own not understanding all of this stuff.
Totally fine. I mean, other people aren't either, so I want to hear like
Yeah,
what
no, it
doesn't
sounds
make
like-
sense. Yeah. That's so good. I think eventually this will say React Router, or these defaults will just be React Router.
I
themselves.
think at the moment, if you use Vite right now, these are the options you get because like React Router 7, they just made the announcement, that they're gonna release. So this is like the current state. I believe that's like Remix 2, like version 2. And so the idea once React Router 7 releases, you'll be able to migrate. There'll be like the migration path to point to React Router 7. And I'm assuming, like Brooke said, it's probably not decided yet, but that might say React Router 7 or something like that.
I think that's maybe the best answer.
Yeah.
Because I get the idea that V7 is not out yet. So
Yeah.
but that's sure. But if potentially in the future they might be like, yeah, it's gonna say React Router.
So
Exactly.
So different, like, for instance, like I built a bunch of application with, Remix version 2, and I want to use all the features of like server-side rendering, that it has. So for me to benefit from that, I have to like start with a Remix application. I can't, let's say, use React Router 6 and then try to add those features myself. I bet I can. It's just probably way too much work. And so at the moment, if you want to use all the Remix features that will be included in React Router 7, you need to start with a Remix project. And the idea being, that's why my earlier question about the migration path, once React Router 7 comes out, you'll be able to take this app that you built with this Remix setting and probably run some code mod or whatever. I don't know what the answer is going to be. I'm sure there's a blog post that talks about it, but you'll be able to migrate your application I'm assuming it's going to be straightforward to React Router 7.
Yeah, it'd be like if you're on Vite, if you're on the latest minor, And then you have the future flags enabled, which right now we just have 3. There's not
Yeah.
many. Anyway, you have all that stuff, then yeah, it'll be like changing your imports is kind of what we're planning. So we may have a few more bridge things, but yeah, we're going to try and code mod as much as possible. But yeah, we'll never have a place where like, once React Router V7 is released, this will go away. We're not going to keep it up there because then that's just confusing. Like, what are we even doing? 'Cause
Yeah.
that's the whole point.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Thanks for asking that question.
I don't see an option for Remix with TypeScript to that. It's by default TypeScript. Okay.
Yeah, it's no, that's a good point. It's confusing in this context. I think we just didn't want to add like too many things, but it's kind of weird because they're sharing the CLI at this
I
point.
just
Yeah. No, it's a great question. Yeah, you can use Remix without TypeScript by the way you just have to.
overrated.
Yeah, we have a template for it as well. Just have to mess it. Thanks for
Funny
that.
story, I actually waited forever not to use TypeScript, and what caused me to start using TypeScript is that Remix came with TypeScript by default. And I was like, you bastards,
I learned servers, so.
bastards. No, TypeScript's good. Yeah.
So
You
I'm
moved.
wondering about
Am
how.
I too loud? You moved.
Oh, no, it's like some chips. So it seems that React Router, the move there, and the way I hear people talking about it is, was a tactical move to cater to a wide audience, looking at your NPM trends chart of people who want to incrementally adopt it. Whereas the new CRA, to me, is not wildly different, but meaningfully different audience, which is people who are starting projects. They have no reason to incrementally adopt anything. I guess I'm wondering, maybe it has to do with meandering around what the point of my question is, which is maybe that first slide about how Dan and whoever he worked on, Chris, they're like, we're gonna be very judicious about what we incorporate into this.
Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering whether you guys will whether you guys will discriminate between functionality you want to provide to the audience that wants to incrementally adopt some features.
Yeah.
Whereas new developers, I mean, like, I have totally different new problems. I want a state management solution.
Yeah.
Optimistic UI, some of the topics for future presentations, like those are my urgent problems with new projects.
Yeah.
Do you think you guys will distinguish between the two or try to incorporate them into the same?
I think the answer is no, because I think they're really the same thing. So I think there's a big challenge, I think, in thinking. It's probably a whole nother talk, but there's this challenge with like what's easy to start and like what's easy to grow, right? Kind of run into that a lot. And I think it's really hard to have that like a middle ground in there. And I kind of think you have to lean one way or the other. I would say React Router, like, would probably lean a little more heavily into like, you can grow with this thing, but there's going to be concepts up front. But that being said, we don't give them all to you like immediately. Like, you can just get it up and running and you've got your router set up and you can just go and you just like write components and everything. That all exists. But if you want to add new pages, it's incredibly simple. You just add a page. You want data fetching, we already have the loader in there. You want that to, you want actions and mutations, we already have that in there. So we have all these pieces that you can incrementally build out your thing. You want RSC? Cool, we have it. You just like send it down as data from a loader. So I think, if I understand, and tell me after I say all this, I did not answer your question anyway, but I think to answer your question, like I'm saying, yeah, all the migration stuff we talked about, I'm kind of trying to avoid a little bit in my talk because it's not a migration talk. I'm not trying to convince anybody to migrate. I'm trying to say, Create React app existed and served a purpose. Those people who are using React scripts, they got to figure out what they're going to do. I think they should, whatever, it's a different conversation. I'm just thinking about you're starting a new project. I think React Router is the best option right now because it's built on Vite. So it's already got everything Vite's got, which is the replacement piece. And it's got all the new stuff. You've got your routing already built in. You've got your data fetching. It's incredibly simple. Prove that over and over again, like with all our remix users. That's all the feedback we get is that model is just very simple and scalable. We've seen it at Shopify. Maybe I should talk about that too. That people are using these patterns and to great success. Building, merchants are building on top of it. So we're like very confident that we have a really good paradigm that people can learn and build on top of. And we want to bring that paradigm back into the rest of the community and make it kind of the default. That sort of answer it. I don't know.
My question is very direct.
That's okay. Yeah. I think we were both pontificating out loud, so that's good. Any other thoughts, feedback, questions? Thank you all so much. That was way more engagement than I could have expected. So thank y'all. That really helped me. I already knew what I needed to change a little bit, but that actually gave me a lot more that I know I need to change. So thank y'all so much for letting me do this tonight. Again, if you want to speak at a future meetup, please let me know. It's super fun. Doesn't have to have slides like I had. You can just live code up here if you are good at that. If you're bad at it, no, I'm just kidding. If you're bad at it, it's a great opportunity to practice. You can just show a little demo site, whatever you want to do. We can do 5 minutes. We can do 20 minutes. I'm not gonna let you speak for an hour unless you're doing Q&As. That's just the reality of it. So yeah. So thanks for coming. Stick around.